If you love wisdom, put your mind up to the ceiling. Don't let it stay in the gutter. Don't let your heart get all cluttered. No, I did not stutter. Listen to all that I've muttered. Your life will only go well if you in wisdom or lovers.
If you're in love with wisdom, come inside.
Come inside. Come inside.
The truth will surely rescue you and I.
You and I. You and I.
If you're in love with wisdom, come inside.
Come inside. Come inside.
The truth will surely rescue you and I.
Hey, good afternoon, and welcome to For the Love of Wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets. This is your host, JC Johnson, and I'm so glad you can hang out with me this afternoon. We are discussing the wisdom of authenticity right now, and it's going to be a great show. We're going to be discussing a topic that I think everyone can relate to and that everyone appreciates, right? We all want people to be authentic, and we want to be that as well. So more on that after this.
If you're in love with wisdom, come inside.
Come inside.
Hey, what's going on, Wisdom family? Each week on For the Love of Wisdom, we promote a new and free audiobook that we believe you will benefit from and become wiser by listening to. This week, we're talking about the wisdom of authenticity. And so, the book for this week is All Marketers Are Liars: The Power of Telling Authentic Stories in a Low-Trust World by Seth Godin. This book is about how to successfully market products to people without having to lie in order to do it. To download this free book today, just visit audibletrial.com/lovewisdom. audibletrial.com/lovewisdom.
All right, what's going on? And welcome back. You're listening to For the Love of Wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets. And it is a beautiful Thursday afternoon here in Cleveland. And it's a little bit, cloudy, a little bit of rain, that kind of vibe, but it's still a good day. Still a beautiful day. Not depending on the weather. So we're going to get into the topic for today. Today we're discussing the wisdom of authenticity. And before we get too much into that, I do want to make sure that we're on the same page and that we have a good understanding of that word. We're going to be discussing a different topic during the next hour, so stick around for that. We're actually going to be talking about theocentricity, okay? So I think that's going to be one that you're going to enjoy as well. It's a little bit of a twist as far as our normal approach to the show, but you'll see that during the next hour, so definitely stick around for that. Last week, we discussed two topics as well. We discussed tranquility, which was a continuation of a show from a few months back, and then we also discussed diversity. And I think that those two episodes were pretty well received. We discussed some things that were really important. It's really crucial that we have peace of mind, right? That we are not so caught up in the day-to-day that we get sidetracked from what really matters. Also, we spoke about diversity, the importance of that. We spoke about positivity last week as well. The wisdom of positivity, keeping a good mindset, and positivity and tranquility. With both of those topics, there was a book that was recommended. It was The Secret by Rhonda Byrne, and that's an awesome book. Definitely recommend anyone that wants some good reading, who wants to be challenged to think better thoughts. That's a great book. And this week, the book that we're recommending is a little bit different, which coincides with this topic, but I think it's also going to be something that you're really going to enjoy as well, since we're talking about authenticity, and we're going to get into that. But first, let's take a look at what this word authenticity means. Also, want to make sure that you know that if you missed any of the past episodes, you can always get those for free download. You can just go to iTunes, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, anywhere where you can get podcasts. Even if you have an Alexa device, all you have to say is, Alexa, play For the Love of Wisdom, and it'll pull that up right for you on your phone or whatever listening device you have. So that's a great way to be able to access the show hands-free as well. So there's no reason not to get that knowledge and wisdom in you. So today, since we're talking about authenticity, let's get into what this word is all about. There's a Greek word, authentikos, which is a root word for our English word authenticity. And it says original, genuine, principle. Also, the first three letters, AUT, are similar to what? Auto, right? So this comes from the word auto. And what does auto mean? Well, anytime you see the word auto, it means self. Okay, so in a car, you got automatic and you got manual. What is automatic? It means that it basically changes the gears by itself, versus manual, where a person actually has to change those gears. And in this case, a man or mankind, right, who's controlling that car, has to change the gears, and that's why it's manual. But automatic is when the car changes it by itself. So this word auto is a part of the root word for authenticity or authentic. Those first three letters, AUT, are in there. And it's also connected to another word, hentes, HENTES, which means doer or being. So it's like being a self-doer, basically do it yourself, right? That's where we get that kind of terminology from, DIY. This word also means, in a more figurative sense, real, entitled to acceptance as factual, basically. So when we say that somebody's authentic, now we mean something more along those lines. Maybe it's somebody who's trustworthy or reliable. And according to Webster's dictionary, it is conforming to an original so as to reproduce essential features. And basically, all that's saying is that if you had a situation where maybe you didn't have the original, it was such a good replication of that original that you could say that it is authentic. When it comes to people, authentic, true to one's own personality, spirit, or character. So this means that this is somebody who's not a chameleon. This is not somebody who's doing something just to fit in or to blend in with the crowd. But this is someone who is truly being themselves. For good or for bad, they're being themselves. And it means it's not false. There's no imitation. They're not being pretentious, right? So they're not pretending to be something that they're not. They are being real with who they really are. So that's what authenticity is all about. And it's really important that we have a good understanding of that. Why? Why is it important to be authentic? You know, love them or hate them. The reason why people voted for Donald Trump is because they believed he was authentic. Some stuff that he says may be outrageous, and I'm sure he says these things on purpose, you know, just for publicity. However, he says them because he believes them. So he's being true to himself. And there were, you know, plenty of political pundits that, you know, they guessed that would harm him. They thought that would actually cause him to lose, but in all actuality, it was the thing that gave him the platform that he had. It's the thing that ultimately led him to victory, because more people connected with that authenticity than they connected with somebody who was a career politician, somebody who people figure is just telling you what you want to hear, because that's the way that they're going to get votes. People, they got tired of that. They said, this is happening all the time. This is nothing new, right? This is just the same old. But when it came to Donald Trump, they saw somebody who was unique, somebody who was what they perceived to be authentic, and someone who was able to speak his mind and who didn't care about the critics. And that's what people like. When people are looking at a leader, they don't want somebody who's just another one of the faces in the crowd. They want somebody who's willing to stand in front of the crowd to do, the opposite of what everyone else is doing. Because they feel like if they put their trust in this type of person, they're going to be led somewhere good. They're not going to be led astray. At least they think so. And this is why throughout history, the greatest leaders, or at least the leaders who have had the greatest following, have been those who are bold, whether for good or for evil. Those who are bold and who live out their true beliefs, who are being their true authentic selves, they always get a big following. But more after that. After this, you're listening to North Coast Underground, where the underground starts with you.
This is your girl, Juicy Jazzo, and I wanted to let you know I'm all about wisdom. Knowledge is power, power is money, and money makes the world go round. And you're listening to For the Love of Wisdom right now, bleeding out your speakers.
All right, welcome back. You're listening to For the Love of Wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets, on North Coast Underground. And today we are discussing the wisdom of authenticity. All right, so what is authenticity all about? Before the break, we basically found out that it has root words with auto. Auto was one of those root words, and auto means self. Another root word, gentes. It means doer. So self-doer. It's kind of like automatic, doing it yourself. And what is that you're doing? You're being yourself. So it's just like how, if someone says you're doing you, what does that mean? That means that you're being yourself. So ultimately, it's being true to your own personality, your spirit, your character. It's being real. It's not being fake. You're not an imitation. You're the real thing. So something that I think is really good is an article. It was just written a couple days ago, and it's called "Authentic Leaders Aren't Afraid of Being Vulnerable." This is a really good one. This is written by Grace Donnelly, and there's some quotes here from some prominent business people who have been successful, and what they're basically saying is the key to their success has been being authentic. It's been, just being real with people that they work with. This is what has helped them to get to the place where they are. One thing it says here is that from health challenges to domestic violence, executives shared their personal struggles at Fortune's Most Powerful Women Summit in Laguna Niguel, California. And this was this past Tuesday. And it says that they were being vulnerable to their coworkers rather than masking their hardships, and that strengthened their professional relationships and their teams. So one thing that they're saying here is that when they were themselves, even the employees that they work with, they found that to be encouraging and refreshing. Because typically when you think of, someone who is like a supervisor or on a superior level as far as their place in the company, you don't really see too much of them being their real selves. It's like they're putting on this mask that they have to put on every week so that the employees, can respect them and listen to them. But what this was showing is that the opposite is really true. When employees see that you're being real, that you're being honest, and that you are allowing yourself to be vulnerable, to display your own shortcomings and weaknesses, it actually takes the load off of everyone that you're working with, because then they say, you know what, it's not just me. Other people have these same kind of struggles. Even people who are my superiors, they have these kind of struggles. They're not above these situations, and they can actually relate to me. They actually know what I'm going through. So retention is higher as a result. Just, their feeling of being able to come and speak to their superiors if there's a problem, they feel a lot more comfortable doing that when they feel like this is somebody who I can open up to. This is somebody who will take the time to listen to me and not judge me, because they have their own stuff that they're dealing with, right? So that's a really good takeaway from that. Here's something that Melanie Foley said. She said, "I've always been real about who I am, and that creates trust." So when somebody feels that the person that they're speaking with, whether it's their supervisor or just anybody, if they feel like this person is willing to open up and share their own, struggles, this is the type of person who's not going to frown when I share mine or say that I'm just making excuses, because this is somebody who gets it. This is someone who either is currently experiencing it or has experienced it at one point or another. And when it was discussed earlier how, they said from health challenges to domestic violence, whatever it was that people were going through, maybe somebody had cancer and they were sharing, how serious that was. And maybe the people that they worked with didn't even know that they were going through that. But now that they've heard it from them, they say, wow, that maybe explains why they look so tired or why they have this kind of attitude. Maybe it's not because there's something personal against me. Maybe it's because they're going through something. Maybe instead of being upset about them or talking behind their back at the water cooler, maybe I need to encourage my supervisor and, help them maybe get through whatever they're going through. Because you never know what people are really going through unless they open up and reveal that to you. It said that some of these women were experiencing domestic violence, and imagine, that's not something that you would normally hear somebody talk about at work, saying what they're going through, being in abusive relationships. That's not something that's popular to talk about. That's not something anyone really wants to admit to, but it was saying that these women were willing to open up in that way because they really wanted their employees to connect. And I think that's awesome. That's awesome that, they're not taking themselves so seriously. They're not putting themselves on this pedestal where they want other people to worship them and see them as higher than what they really are. But they brought it back down to their level and said, I go through stuff just like you. I'm no different from you. I may have a title, but that title means nothing when I walk out of these doors. When I go home, I have to deal with whatever home life is. And no matter how successful you are, nobody is exempt from things that are outside of their control. At work, they don't have to deal with that, because if somebody gets unruly, that person can be fired, right? They can be escorted out by security. But at home, that's a different story. You can be a CEO at work, but you may not necessarily be a CEO when you get home. And that's the thing that they were trying to let people know. They were trying to let people know that, hey, I get it. I go through the same things that you go through. And another quote here from the article. It says, authentic leadership has to start with the search for personal purpose. that is pretty powerful when you think about it. If you're a leader, you have to have a vision. If you don't have a vision, then you're basically asking people to follow nothing. All you're telling them is that nothing that you have to say is relevant, because it's like, who are you? What are you telling me that is going to inspire me to do anything? Why should I accomplish the tasks that you're presenting to me? Is there a reason? No. I mean, they look at it like, what do you expect me to do if you don't even understand, or you're not even able to explain to me the vision of this company or this project? Then how can I really get behind that? Another thing they said here, this is another quote from Melanie Foley. She said, "I do believe asking for help has been the key to my success. Don't be afraid to ask for help, but don't be too self-absorbed to give it either." And that's great advice. You know, don't be so high and mighty that you can't ask for help, but also if you know that somebody needs it, you should be able to offer it, because everyone was at that place at one point in their lives where they needed that. That's how they got to where they're at today. So what they're saying here is make sure that you pay it forward. But more on that after the break. You're listening to North Coast Underground, where the underground starts with you.
Hey everybody, you're listening to For the Love of Wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets.
With your host, Jason Johnson.
All right, what's going on? Welcome back. You're listening to For the Love of Wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets. And on today's episode, we are discussing the wisdom of authenticity. So we're talking about what it means to be authentic. We're talking about what it means to be real. And so we looked at an article about some businesswomen who were revealed to be authentic because they were sharing their own life experiences with their employees, and they were actually able to connect to that. Now let's take a look at a book. This is a book that was written by Seth Godin, and this is really good. It's called All Marketers Are Liars. That's a striking statement, right? So, all marketers are liars. What is he talking about? Well, here's the subtitle. The power of telling authentic stories in a low trust world. So, just as mentioned earlier, if you heard it, we're saying that basically this book is about how to successfully market products to people without having to lie to do it, right? So there's nothing wrong with marketing. I think that he was just being a little tongue-in-cheek there when he said that all marketers are liars. But what he's basically saying is that this is something that has gone on a little bit too far, as far as people telling you anything in order for you to buy something. And a great example, in the publisher's notes, it says that every marketer tells a story. And if they do it right, we believe them. We believe that wine tastes better in a $20 glass than a $1 glass. We believe that an $80,000 Porsche is vastly superior to a $36,000 Volkswagen, which is virtually the same car. We believe that $225 Pumas will make our feet feel better and look cooler than $20 no-name shoes. And believing it makes it true. Now, this is pretty interesting that he was saying that, because really, this is what people believe. People believe that if this has a certain name brand, it's better than something else, even though let's say a Nike shirt, it's got that check or swoosh on it, but that same shirt, let's just say with a, it could also have an emblem of Oshkosh B'gosh, or maybe a concert t-shirt promoting an artist, whatever. Anything can be on that shirt. That shirt, I'm sure, cost everyone the same amount of money. So Nike didn't pay any more for that shirt to be produced than someone else that you've never heard of. But because the person you've never heard of has never been heard of, they can't afford to charge Nike prices because nobody would buy it. People buy something for the brand alone. And that Nike shirt may not even be as interesting to look at. Maybe all it has is that swoosh on it. Yet the other shirt maybe is fully decorated and it's got all types of interesting stitching and shirt printing and all that on it. Yet people won't pay more for that because it's something they've never heard of. And Nike is good at marketing and saying that, hey, our stuff is better just because we made it. Here's another quote from the book. We believe what we want to believe. And once we believe something, it becomes a self-fulfilling truth. So again, if we think that something is better, if you just really believe that Crest is better than Colgate, then you will be a loyal Crest consumer and you'll always buy that kind of toothpaste. One other thing he said is, when we recognize the fraud for what it is, we feel incredibly stupid. Something more than our bank accounts is damaged. Our egos are damaged. As a result, it's almost impossible for the marketer to regain our trust. So this goes into what happens when people find out that these products are not all that they're cracked up to be. When they find out, hey, this is not really true what they're saying. This thing is not going to change my life. It's not going to get me, a better social standing or, make people like me more. No, this is just what it is. A bag of grapes, right? It is what it is. A stick of deodorant. Nothing more, nothing less. It does what it's supposed to do. It doesn't do beyond. It doesn't do all the stuff that this marketer is saying it does. And people, when they find that out, they begin to lose faith in that product. And especially if they spent a lot of money on it, what they say is, you may have gotten me this time, but never again. I'll never buy into this again because you tricked me. You made me think this was something that it's not. And why would you want to do that? Why would you want to take away value from someone like that? It's not cool. It's not good. It's not good business. So, another quote from the book that I think is pretty cool here. It says, we'd like to believe that efficient, useful, cost-effective products and services are the way to succeed, that hard work is its own reward. Most marketers carry around a worldview that describes themselves as innovators. So it says they describe themselves as innovators and not storytellers. And that's really interesting too when you think about it. So I'm gonna repeat that. It says that we'd like to believe that efficient, useful, cost-efficient products and services are the way to succeed, that hard work is its own reward. Most marketers carry around a worldview that describes themselves as innovators and not storytellers. So that's the world that we would like to believe exists. But the reality is that's not how it is. The reality is that some people are really just in it for the money. They're not creating products to add value to the world. They're creating products because of their bottom line, because they know how much money it's going to make. They know how much maybe fame it will get them. But it's short-lived, because if somebody uses a product and they see that it's not really all that it's cracked up to be, it doesn't live up to the standard that is being promoted, they're going to stop buying that product. They're going to stop supporting it. And that's not good business. Why would you want to do that? Why wouldn't you want to have lifelong customers? You don't want to give false promises. That's not the way to do things. But unfortunately, that is the trend that we're seeing in a lot of businesses today. So another thing from the book, All Marketers Are Liars, Seth Godin has this to say. People tell themselves a story about finding a bargain. They build up the expectation by driving 30 miles out of their way, while on vacation, no less, and then are delighted to spend $40 for a $400 jacket that was never intended to be sold for $400 and probably only costs $4 to make. And that is the truth right there. And we talked about that a little bit earlier with, you know, a product like Nike. You know, maybe they charge a certain amount, but it probably didn't cost that much to make it. They probably are making a 300% profit off that. But more on that after this. You're listening to North Coast Underground, and this is JC Johnson. We'll be right back after this. All right, what's going on? Welcome back. This is your host, JC Johnson. You're listening to For the Love of Wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets. So we are wrapping up our conversation here on the wisdom of authenticity. And I want to just look at a few quotes that really stood out to me on this topic. I think that these individuals had some great things to say about it. The first one is from Carl Gustav Jung, and here's what he said. He said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." So as we're speaking about authenticity, this is a great quote because it's saying, hey, what's the point of living your life? What's the point of living your whole life, even if you make it to be, let's just say you're 110 years old? What's the purpose if you lived your whole life being somebody other than who you really are? What is there to gain from that? What is the benefit? That's being fake, right? Who wants to be fake? Why not just be yourself? Isn't life much more meaningful when you're able to really discover who you are? And you would think that that's easy for people to do, but it's difficult for a lot of people to just be themselves. Why is that? Because they're afraid that if they're just themselves, people are not going to accept them for who they really are. People are going to recognize that they're flawed individuals. They're going to recognize that they don't have it all together. They're going to recognize that really, in many cases, maybe they're not trustworthy, or maybe they're not as intelligent as they seem. Maybe they don't have it together as much as people think they do. So they hide who they really are. They put a mask on it. But why would you do that? You know, that's not life. That's horrible. That's a horrible existence. Steve Maraboli had this to say. A lot of the conflict that you have in your life exists simply because you're not living in alignment. You're not being true to yourself. And this is taking it a step further. So we talked about people who are, maybe they have a level of success, but they're not being themselves. But what he's talking about here is he's talking about people who experience hardships in their life because they're not being themselves. Imagine that. Imagine things not going well for you in your life just because you're not keeping it real. That happens a lot. You would be surprised to see how many people really could be farther along, but they shoot themselves in the foot because they think that maybe their advantage is pretending to be something that they're not, when they don't realize that the true advantage that they have is that there's nobody else on this earth who's like them. They're the only them that exists. So really, that should be what they're striving. You know, that should be what they're striving for. to show people their true, authentic self, not to show people a pretentious version of themselves, a chameleon. Right? So if you have a person who is, let's say they're pretending to be Kim Kardashian, why would somebody want to pretend to be her? Right? There's already a Kim Kardashian. We don't need 2 Kim Kardashians or 5 or 100 or whatever, right? So, but people think, well, Kim Kardashian's popular, people like her. I'd rather be like that. But the thing is, if they were just themselves, they have no idea how many opportunities would open up for them, because there's people who are waiting for someone who possesses the qualities that only they possess. Yet they shoot themselves in the foot because they don't even give people that opportunity to experience that real version of themselves, because they're too busy trying to imitate somebody else. And people can see through that too. So you just make yourself look ridiculous by trying to fit a mold that was never intended for you in the first place. And it just doesn't make any sense. All right, joined here on Instagram, Auntie Teresa, what's going on? We're going to take a look at one more quote. This one is from May Sarton, and it says, "We have to dare to be ourselves, however frightening or strange that self may prove to be." Now, that right there is interesting, okay? Because, you know, what this is saying basically is that you may be in a situation where by being yourself, you know, being yourself, it may not be comfortable. It may not be something that makes other people comfortable. It may be harder for you, right? Because imagine if you lived in a society where everybody hated with a passion Diet Coke, right? So you were in a society that was totally against Diet Coke, yet you just so happen to love Diet Coke. It's your favorite drink. But now you're afraid to tell people, because if you tell people that, you assume that you'll be an outcast. So how frightening, how strange would that be for you to be the only one that has that taste in beverage, right? So when you're being yourself, there's a risk that comes along with that. You run the risk of not being accepted or not being understood, and nobody wants to go through that. But it is in learning to really be yourself and not be afraid of what people think that you're really in the best place that you could possibly be in life. These are the people who are innovators. These are the people who are people that make a difference. People who aren't afraid to let people see their true, authentic self. But that's it for the authenticity discussion. On hour 2, we'll be back and we'll be talking about theocentricity. You're listening to North Coast Underground, where the underground starts with you.
Knowledge is power, power is money, and money makes the world go round.
Money, power, respect, I get it. Higher, learning, yeah, I'm winning. Only get better with time, keep got on my mind with wisdom. There's no limit, there's no limit. Get up and get it, can achieve the impossible, conquer every obstacle. Exhausted from grinding, constantly pushing, do what they say I could. Life is what you make it. Knowledge is power, don't let them take it.
If you're in love with wisdom, come inside.
Come inside, come inside.
The truth will surely rescue